Hey guys, it's Sierra with lifefullandfrugal.com. We welcome you and thank you so much for joining our little journey and our little corner of the internet. Today I'm going to be sharing with you about our greenhouse. It's always a popular post when we put something up about it on social media. People are always really curious about it. And the really cool thing about the project is that a lot of the materials were actually recycled. So I'm going to go through some of the things that we use to actually build the greenhouse. With the way things are going right now in the economy, buying new building materials is very expensive. So if you can find ways to, find somebody that has extra building materials, I encourage you to do that. We're gonna go over all of the elements, all of the recycled materials. There's nothing like being able to have a greenhouse to place all of your plant starts. So without further ado, here we go. One of my favorite elements about the greenhouse has to be the door. The door is kind of like the crown of the entire project. It's got the old chippy paint and it has these beautiful little Christmas wreaths and it has the old doorknob. It's actually something that our dad had in his garage for eons, but we love the door and we just added a little lock to be able to shut it because the hinge. The second thing I want to mention is the floor. The flooring was actually recycled from a church that had a walking path. And they tore the walking path up, and these wooden planks are still in awesome shape and they were really heavy wood. I'm not sure what kind, but it was perfect because they were all the perfect size. And I really think the floor looks really neat. It's a unique feature as well. So recycled the floor from an old church walking path. The next thing that I love about the greenhouse is this shelf that has a split between the two planks of wood, about 1 inch to 1.5 inches apart, spread apart. And I did that on purpose so that there was a gap between them so that when we watered, the water went straight through instead of sitting on the shelf. Also, the wood was recycled. One other thing besides allowing the gap between the two boards was I also painted them with all-weather paint because I didn't want water sitting on the wood without any kind of treatment, because I didn't want the wood to rot, because there's a lot of watering that goes on in the greenhouse. So I wanted to make sure that that wood was protected. I got the waterproofing all-weather paint from Lowe's. I encourage you, if you're going to use wood, to have treated wood and possibly consider painting it with all-weather waterproofing paint. Another really fun feature about the greenhouse is the shelving units. So all of the shelves are recycled closet shelves. Actually, my boss was pitching them. They were on his trash heap beside the road, and one morning I just picked them up and put them in my car and took them home. I later let him know that I took them and he was happy that I was able to use them, but they're the perfect shelving units for a greenhouse because the water's not sitting on the surface, the water is flowing through. And what you want in a greenhouse is, because you have to do so much watering, you want the water to be able to flow through. In order to get the shelving units attached to the wall, I had a bit of a dilemma on trying to figure out how to attach them to the walls. So what I did was I bought some L braces from Lowe's and we screwed those into the wall and then set the shelving units on top of them. And then we actually braced the shelving units to the L braces with zip ties. And where we wanted to reinforce the attachment, we added eyelet screws and attaching the shelving unit to the eyelet screws with a zip tie. And it's worked perfectly. We haven't had any issues with them moving or shifting or anything like that. So it was really a good solution. Next up are the all-important windows. You will inevitably need some ventilation because sometimes the greenhouse gets intensely warm. So the windows that we got, again, from our dad, he's always done construction all of his life, and he's a bit of a collector. If anybody knows our dad, they know he's a collector. And so he hooked us up with these windows, and they're actually hinged at the top so that the windows can swing out and be propped open, as you can see here, so that there's airflow into the greenhouse. Because the windows are not really like super flush against the wall and they're able to move and sway in the wind, I found this rubber lining at Lowe's. I think it's probably for some sort of door frames or window frames, but I just literally shoved it up close to the corner of where the frame of the window and the window met, so that it was like flush against the two. It kind of reduced airflow, especially during the winter, and wedged shut without a lot of airflow along the cracks of the window. So that was my solution, and it was really easy to just measure, cut, and staple around the edge of the windows. One of my favorite features of the greenhouse also is the corner soil box. My dad actually took pieces of old red barnwood and made a little box in the corner for us to add soil to whenever we need to do potting or seed transplanting. And I love it because it's just this convenient little spot to hold your potting soil that you can just quickly take your little spade and get soil from at any time. And then there's a flat surface just to the right of it where you can do your potting, and it's a really solid surface, and it's the perfect spot to do all of your seed transplanting and stuff like that. Bags of soil take up a lot of space, so this is the perfect spot to dump a couple bags and save some space. And for the gables of the roof, we actually used just some recycled wood that my dad had laying around. In a gable of a roof, you have, a big triangle and then a T in the middle that holds all the pieces together. And the pieces that hold all the pieces together are just recycled pieces of wood and just some old nails. Actually, we didn't even use screws. We just used old-fashioned nails for that. So I think it's pretty cool that we're able to do the gables with these little just odds and ends pieces of wood. One of the cool things we did also was we designed this little corner nook for all of our long tools like hoes and shovels and rakes and things like that to all go into, so that they're not all over the floor or falling anywhere. You can just set them in kind of like a little broom closet. So everything sits in there snugly and nicely and out of the way. And I love that little feature of the greenhouse. So the lumber that we used for the walls was all either recycled materials that my dad had left over from old jobs, or we went to the discount lumber section at Lowe's where they have pieces of lumber that are not perfectly straight or they're really knotted. They discount those pieces, and that's where we got all of our lumber for the walls. So all of it was either recycled or discounted. The siding is corrugated plastic siding that we also got from Lowe's. Now, this is where we splurged a little bit because it wasn't that cheap to buy the corrugated siding. It's really nice because it fits together really snugly like siding normally does. And it's really thick, it's hard plastic so that it doesn't flap in the wind or break. It's a little bit higher quality. If you're going to try to save money, it might be, not your number one option, but it is really nice because it is durable and it's not going to break down. The only thing I would say is to make sure you measure properly when you buy the corrugated siding. We had just enough siding to make it work. We had to actually use little scrap pieces in a lot of places because we didn't quite have the measurements correct. So actually just be sure that you measure correctly before you buy the siding. And obviously, alternatively, you can use plastic sheeting. They make some amazing plastic sheeting now that's pretty thick and pretty reliable. And if you don't have the money for the expensive corrugated siding, it is a really good alternative. So thank you so much for joining us for our little greenhouse tour, and hopefully you're enlightened and inspired, and that you find ways to live lifeful and frugal. Thanks so much for joining us. Be blessed, and we'll see you soon.